Hello and welcome to Singled Out Video. This is the first video where I'm going to be reviewing some games that interest me. Today's game that interests me is Kings of War, the mass battle game by Mantic Games. They released a new expansion, Halpi's Rift, this week, and I opened it to have a look at what's inside. So, what's inside? Let's have a look. So, looking at the contents page here, we have quite a lot of pages devoted to the background. The background for Kings of War has been expanded quite a lot over 3rd edition. They really have taken it to themselves to expand the world of Panathor and make it their own over the past few years. This book looks at how a magical rift has happened, and the magical forces that have been released are either being captured and used against the world, or people are trying to stop it from being used to do horrible, horrible things. The book opens up also with lots of characters, a lot of people who are involved in the story, their names, their features, their characteristics, their likes, dislikes, and so on. It also looks at Ratkin in a lot more depth, which are obviously a fan favourite. It then looks at how to run the game as a campaign, how you can run it with your friends at home, certainly more of a casual gaming system rather than a tournament one. Then looks at heroes and their stats. It then looks at some errata. Obviously this year, because of the pandemic, there has been many games to really look at data, but they've changed some of the rules here and there. It then finally looks at a battle report they played at Mantic HQ. Before we go further, I want to take a minute to look at some of the artwork. Here you'll see a spread of some Ratkin versus some orcs, with a little dinosaur there at the back having a good time. And I want to say that the big sort of set pieces of art throughout this book, I was really impressed by. They've obviously spent a lot of time on improving the presentation, and some of the artwork in this book is very evocative, good sort of fantasy battle stuff, but they really have spent a lot of time on making it look good. So this work, as well as the maps you'll see next of the campaign world, really do flesh out the world a lot. And a lot of people, myself included, find that having an evocative background, having an evocative map, characters, and a reason for fighting, it does add to the game. Models aren't just bits of plastic and metal. Well, okay, they are, but ultimately I think a lot of us play miniature war games because we want to look at the models and have a story, and this supplement does that very, very well indeed. And what's a story without some characters in it? First of all, we have Dravak Dalkan, a abyssal dwarf who's obviously a bad bit of work, who's on a quest to open the rift, pull out all the power, and presumably get two hands the same size. We then have probably my favourite character, Bannock No Alarm. I mean, look at him. He's a cross between a dwarf and a pro wrestler. He's an absolute unit. We then have Twitch Keenear, who's a classic Ratkin. Evil sorcerer, power mad, wanting to talk to the abyss for presumably just, well, reasons really. We then have Nimue Waydancer, a hair elf who is an impulsive sorceress who wants to go and protect the rift. Also, Zinok Iceblood, a lizardkin who's now reviled by his own kind, who's turned to the ancient art of necromancy in the attempt to find an army that is eternally loyal to him. There are other characters in the book, and I haven't gone through all of them here, but to be honest, I wanted to end with a picture of a dinosaur in a robe. Next up we have the Ratkin. I've always been a friend of Ratkin in other fantasy games and the like, and these ones don't stray too far from what we like from Ratkin. They're quite chaotic, they have evil magic, they have little regard for their own lives. I quite like how Mantic have dealt with the Abyss. I think it's an area of the IP they've been exploring quite well, how the Abyss is built into the game world, and the Ratkin's relationship with it is quite interesting. And as you see here, there's quite a good map of Ratkin base, a bit of flavour. It's nice seeing all those layers forming, full of evil Ratkin. Good story there, evil ideas, plenty of vicious inventions to try and spread death and disease and ruin wherever they can. And again, more artwork. I've mentioned it quite a few times now, the artwork, but I really like it, and I think this picture is glorious. Really nice colouring to it, and it certainly does make them stand out quite a lot. Right, enough fluff talk, now let's look at some rules. After all, we're all war gamers. Plenty of magical items here. The ones I've got on this screenshot, you'll see here and here. Both of them add to channeling tables. One of them adds also to your spellcasting level. Now, spellcasting levels were mentioned in the main game, but didn't do anything. In this supplement, they do, because they form the main body of what this campaign setting is. This game can be set on many magical planes, similar to supplements in the past, such as Storm of Magic, a long time ago now. That was Warhammer supplement. You can fight on different planes and have giant spells. Now, because of course Kings of War is such a clean system, the spells have fairly simple effects, but can of course be devastating. Here we have, for example, spells that can add to speed, to wave and route values, and to melee attacks. Now, obviously, 5 attacks extra melee is a huge number. It can add, well, almost 50% to a unit's strength. Plus on the speed is huge for threat ranges and the like. These spells are mechanically quite straightforward, but can of course give you a crushing turn if you manage to get them off at the right point. We also have here some other spells on the Empyrean plane. Empyrean plane? Empyrean plane? Who knows? Mantic knows. I don't know. Again, fairly straightforward rules. You've got Celestial Thunder, Bonus Thundering Charge. But again, that can give your cavalry some crushing attacks there. Attacks that always damage on 4+. Great against cracking dwarf armor and the like. Again, fairly straightforward rules, but very clean rules, very simple rules, but ones that can have huge effects upon the gaming table and add a lot of flavour to the game, where you have the plane, different special effects from the terrain, the like blessed forests, for example, that can healing and so on. So you can get a real feel for having your fight happen on a different plane of existence. Your adventurers, your army get there, and they have to deal with the strange land and deal with the strange effects that are affecting both them and their enemies. Right, now for some characters. I haven't focused upon many characters here, many ones that caught my eye. Also, I'm a Dwarf fan and a Basilean fan, from a looks point of view as well as a way they play. So here you've got a seer, Tollivar the Seer, who's a spellcaster, which obviously helps now with the campaign rules. He can cast Bastion and cast it on a different target at the same turn. We've got here Nimue Dancer, who can, once per game, cast a spell, have speed 10, fly, and then she can cast. Now, being able to move that fast and move at the double, and then cast Wind Blast, that's some good stuff. So she can really move around and reposition the enemy. Obviously, allowed to get in the charge range, allowed to reposition units so they can't get in your way, making sure their units can't charge you. Force movement in any game, force movement in any war game is huge. 3 dwarfs have got Bannock Coalarm, who can cast Fireball that has Shattering. So what's better than a Fireball that also fights a bit like a cannon? After all, what the dwarves need is more cannons. Now we have Summerata. It mentions in the book, of course, that due to COVID, the additions to the rules and the rebalancing of units hasn't happened as much because there's been less data to go on. And probably fairly obvious from my video so far, I haven't played Kings of War as much as some real pros, so I'm not going to insult everyone by going through all the changes in depth because I'll probably get them wrong. The main one that caught my eye really was Ignore Cover on artillery and the like. That can now fling shells over targets a lot more easily without requiring line of sight. That was missing from the base rules, which surprised me a little bit, and adding it here makes a lot of sense to me. Also changed to irregular units here and there. Again, I haven't played the game enough to actually know how big an effect that is to units, but I'm sure making some units no longer irregular has made them a lot more useful to those armies. And finally, really, we have a battle report. At first I thought it was a little bizarre having a battle report. Then again, Mantic hasn't got a regular White Dwarf-like publication where they can sort of showcase their stuff. So it's quite nice to see a big battle in place, to see mass units. One reason why I love Kings of War and I want to get more involved in it, making these daft videos, playing more games and generally getting more involved, is the vista of all the models fighting together. I think a mass battle fantasy game is one of the best war games you can get in terms of looks. It really captures that huge feel which I think is missing in a lot of skirmish games. And seeing Mantic fighting with their studio armies is great. It is nice to see a sort of aspirational way an army can look, and it gives it a bit of context, I think, in terms of what you can make the game look like. A bit of effort in, much better than staring at grey blobs of unpainted plastic bashing against each other on a tablecloth. Finally, I guess the question is Halpi's Rift any good? I'm not going to mark it out of 10 or out of 7 or any of that sort of stuff. Rather than that, I'm going to give Mantic 2 stars and a wish. 2 good things and 1 way they can improve it. First of all, I love how they have improved the background, how they've expanded upon it. This is, after all, a supplement about campaigns, so background and fluff is super important. If it wasn't, it wouldn't be a campaign book. Secondly, I like some of their new characters. I think because Mantic has such a tight and a fairly small rule set, without huge amounts of special rules that have weird abilities, I think where a lot of the interest can lie can be how they design characters that can do things beyond the norm. And I like that. I like how the characters can break the rules a little bit and do weird abilities that would normally be too complex or too fiddly on a larger unit, or a unit can have more than one of. Finally, a wish. More model art here, please, Mantic. I think you've got quite a few pages here. You can probably hear the flicking of the book now, of Ratkin, and no pictures of Ratkin in the book, which is a crime because I love Ratkin pictures. We have some pictures at the back, but the artwork throughout the book is quite nice. But I liked in how your main rulebook, it was full of pictures of your armies fighting against each other. It had a real sort of old school fantasy wargame look to it. I like seeing models in large units, and it'd be lovely to see some of them showcased here. Then again, page count's probably a thing, but there we are. That's my wish. Anyway, that's that for now. If you're still listening or indeed watching this video, thank you very much. Much appreciated. I've had a podcast for a long time. You'll see approximately now a link to that, including a thank you to all the patrons I've had on my podcast for several years now. It's recently become more linked to many gaming systems, and you can find it there if you want to hear more rambling from me. Other than that, I may do more of these videos. You never know. And that's it. So thank you for listening, and goodbye.